Welcome to
CZsWorld Family Fun Night.
One. Hey everybody, I'm Chase Will.
I'm Ashley McDonald.
And I'm Zach from CZsWorld.
Welcome to CZsWorld Family Fun Night. Tonight we're talking about Saw in celebration of the upcoming movie Spiral from the Book of Saw. And we have with us Zachary Morris of CZsWorld. Zach, you actually have a documentary coming up soon about Saw, don't you?
I do. So this is going to be a part of my horror history series. So over the last 4 or 5 weeks, I've been covering all of the major characters of Saw, doing character analysis on my channel. And this is going to be the grand finale of the Saw characters, the big final boss of the series.
Sweet. So you've been watching these movies for a long time, because I know you go like really in depth in your videos on the franchise and every movie you cover. Like, how long have you been a fan of the franchise?
Actually, not that long. I first started watching them like shortly before Jigsaw came out, because I knew I wanted to cover Jigsaw on my channel. So I ended up just binging 1 through 7 before Jigsaw came out, and ended up seeing all of them in 2017. And I've kind of slowly become more and more of a fan ever since then.
I'm sorry you had to sit through Jigsaw.
I didn't like Jigsaw that much when I first saw it, but it has kind of grown on me. I do really like the characters like Logan and Eleanor, and I hope with Spiral that we are not going to kind of like wipe out that storyline, because I do want to see them again. And there are things that I like about it. I see it as kind of like an homage to the Saw franchise in the same way that you had, like, to make a Star Wars analogy, I think a lot of people will understand. Like The Last Jedi kind of, sorry, not The Last Jedi, The Force Awakens. It was very, it used a lot of elements from the movies that we had already seen, but it was kind of like reintroducing those elements to the new generation. And that's kind of how I see Jigsaw. Like, we see a lot of the old traps, we see a lot of the old tropes, like even the twist is one that we've seen in a Saw movie before. And yeah, I think it's kind of the start of something new to get people up to speed. It does a good job of pleasing the original fans and anyone who might be joining the series for the first time.
Now, with a Spiral coming up, do you think they're going to continue any of the storylines from Saw 7, like who the 2 mystery people were? Or do you think it's going to be like the start of something completely different?
I would love that, but I think this is just going to be kind of a new start. What I'm hoping that they do is kind of, it'll be kind of its own story set aside from what we've seen so far, but I want it to introduce like a new villain. And if they introduce a new villain, then they've already announced Saw 10. I'm hoping what they do is kind of build up to a showdown between Gordon, Logan, and whoever the new villain ends up being. I think that would be a really cool direction to take it. We've already seen like different people take on the Jigsaw persona and have different ideas of what to do with it. Like Amanda wanted to use it to torture people who she feels have strayed from the path of Jigsaw, and Hoffman tried to use it for power, and Jigsaw started off trying to use it for like a vigilante justice, but then he kind of strayed from his own path. So everyone has these different ideas of what Jigsaw should be. And I think it's interesting to have all these people who want to be Jigsaw potentially going up against each other. As far as the 2 disciples from Saw 7, I think it would be really cool to see like if it ended up being, I know like in the actual filming of it, it's the guys from the opening of Saw 7, but I feel like since we don't see that in the movie, they can kind of make it whoever they want now. I think it would be really cool to see like Corbett Denlin and Daniel Matthews bringing those actors back as adults and seeing how their lives have been impacted by having that encounter with Jigsaw as a kid. I don't think we're going to see any of that in Spiral. I think it's going to be a new Saw story, just kind of inspired by John Kramer.
That'd be like a lot of fan service to put into like a 90-minute movie. Like, I really doubt they're going to put it in there somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like we've seen in the trailer, there's just that picture of John Kramer, and it's like a screenshot from Saw 2. So you kind of know that like Tobin's not going to do anything new in the movie. Otherwise, like, why would they have not just taken a new picture of him?
Yeah.
which is kind of sad because without Tobin Bell, it's still a Saw movie. It's like from the Book of Saw, but it's so different to see it without him in it.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine what they would do at this point because they've already done like 4 movies after Tobin that still have, or 5 movies after Tobin that still have him in it. But yeah, there's also a part of me that's like, I'm like, he's not going to be around forever. Let's use him while we have him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? So the both of you, what are you guys hoping to see from the new movie Spiral? Like, what's the number one thing you're hoping for?
You go first.
Okay. I think it'd be interesting, like, since we have like Chris Rock and he's clearly like a cop or a detective, I think it's going to be more like that based, which reminds me a little bit more of like a Strum versus like Hoffman battle, or maybe there's like a corrupt system. Maybe that's something we're going to see a little bit more of. I'm not really sure. Like, as far as what I want, I want it to go back to being more like detective versus like in like secretly being a part of like the Saw people. Like, I don't know. I want to see more like battle of like wits and minds in it. I do love the Saw traps. I do love seeing the games play out, but I also like seeing it be like person versus person kind of in what they'll do in that moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the series kind of has this reputation as being like the torture porn series, but I think a lot of people that like still enjoy Saw to this day don't really like it for those reasons. I think people enjoy like the thriller aspects of it, and having that battle of wits would really please those people. I'm hoping it doesn't go like too, I mean, it's going to be Chris Rock. I don't want it to be like too comedy-y. And I know like, I don't know if you guys have followed the Saw Twitter account at all. But that has been like very goofy oriented, like a Wendy's kind of Twitter account. So I'm hoping that means that like they're not, I'm hoping that doesn't mean that they're not going to take the movie seriously at all. I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be kind of like John Krasinski was a comedy actor before he did A Quiet Place, and then that ended up being really well. Like Jordan Peele doing Us. So I think what I'm hoping from it, have you guys seen Split?
Yeah.
So in the sense that Split works really well on its own, like for the first 99% of the movie, I was like, wow, that's a really cool like psychological thriller, and then it tied it into the franchise kind of at the end. I think that's kind of like a good format to look for with Spiral.
That'd be nice. Now, can you guys take Chris Rock seriously in this in the role he has in this movie? Because like watching the trailers, I'm like, every time he yells, I'm expecting him to go on some kind of like comedic rant.
I think it'll be easier for me to take Chris Rock seriously than Samuel L. Jackson.
I'm expecting Samuel L. Jackson to like recruit Jigsaw.
What was that?
So I'm expecting him to like recruit Jigsaw for the next Avengers project.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he has a very specific typecast that is in a lot of his characters, and I'm interested to see, like, you know, he always has the color purple ingrained in his character somehow, how that's gonna tie into the Saw franchise.
I guess for me, like when thinking back on all the Saw movies, we've had famous actors in it, but it was like I never saw them as being that famous actor. I saw them more as like the character. So for me, when the casting for Spiral came out, I was kind of like, oh, so this actor's playing this role. So I just have to remember when I like go into the theater or however I end up seeing it, that I need to keep an open mind and be like, all right, like don't just see this as like Chris Rock or Samuel L. Jackson, like see this as like them portraying the character. Like I want to believe their performance as that character for me to appreciate their work. Like I knew they do well, Chris Rock does comedic work, but I'm just gonna give him a chance. I'm gonna hope for the best. I'm gonna hope that they don't turn my favorite horror movie franchise into a satire. But I mean, I'm just gonna be an optimist about it. I'm excited for it, and I hope it ties into the story, but I hope it's honestly a different story, because I feel like in a lot of ways John Kramer's story has been completed. So I don't want them to just keep being like, oh, and here's a little bit more. Oh, and here's a little bit more. Because I love character development and I love the flashback sequences, but I feel like there's so many uncharted and like untraveled different like roads that we can go on with this series, that I want them to kind of branch off into a different direction. So that's what I'm hoping for with Spiral.
I'll tell you the other thing that I want to see is in Jigsaw, we were introduced to this website called Jigsaw Rules, where like the fans had kind of reconstructed all of the Jigsaw traps. And it seemed like he kind of has this following that isn't physically together, but they're linked by this website. And it would be interesting to see, like, we don't really get a good look at it. We don't really see the website, and Eleanor's the only member of it that we meet. But I imagine that there's a lot of other members of that out there, and it would be interesting to see like what some of those people are like, or what they might be planning in terms of that universe. It's interesting that you mentioned like other famous actors that we've had in the Saw franchise, because I feel like most of the actors that have come up, at least like in the original saga, I think of mostly as being from Saw. I think like maybe the exceptions would be Carrie Elwes, obviously, like having been in The Princess Bride and
Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yeah.
Donald Glover, like he was a big one. Donald Glover.
Which one?
Donald Glover.
Oh yeah, that's true. I guess Donnie Wahlberg's been in a few other things, but I kind of mostly think of him as being from Saw.
The actress from I can't remember her name, and I feel bad about this. From Seventh Heaven, she was in Saw 2. Seventh Heaven. I can't remember what her name is.
I know the woman that plays Detective Carey was in Starship Troopers. Is that maybe who you're thinking of?
No, let me look her up really quick.
Yeah.
And I'll get back to you.
In the meantime, talking about the documentary, what can fans of yours expect? Because they've seen you dig into movies that are deep cuts, they're popular movies, new ones. Like, what's different about this? Is this kind of continuation of what you're doing?
Yeah, so this is going to be the first like feature-length episode of Horror History. So I'm really digging into everything that we've seen from John Kramer. As we mentioned a few minutes ago, there's all of these flashbacks, and it's not really clear all of the time like where this takes place in John Kramer's life. The continuity is very, like, I really believe that they have a like a Bible of continuity for the Saw franchise, but when it's portrayed and when it's presented to us in the movies, we aren't necessarily seeing like, oh, this takes place exactly in this year. But I've gone through into like all the little details, like tags at the what's the place where they analyze a dead body?
Coroner's office.
Yes, thank you. And like pieces of paper in the police station and stuff. So I think this is going to be, and like I've looked around online, I think this is going to be like the most accurate timeline of the events of John Kramer's life. And I'm also going to be breaking down like his character on a psychological level. So what there's going to be like 10 different chapters to this video. There's going to be John Kramer's past, the origin of Jigsaw, John Kramer's rebirth into Jigsaw, then the cult of Jigsaw, his disciples, the bathroom game, the nerve gas house, mastering his craft, the trial of Jeff Denlin, and finally his death. So I'm going to be looking at like how he kind of developed the condition of psychopathy and how all of the different events that he's gone through in his life have contributed to that.
Nice.
I'm super excited. So excited.
As a little sneak peek here, I am going to be in the full Bully the Puppet garb for this video. Also talking about stuff from the comic, and as I mentioned, putting together that full John Kramer timeline. So I think longtime fans of the series are going to be really satisfied with it. And I think also new fans who are just coming to see Spiral are going to be, it's going to be a good way to catch up with the events of the Saw franchise up until this point and understand like the nuances of those characters.
Awesome. I'm excited for this one.
Me too.
Yay.
So like, how long have you been a horror fan? You've been doing this pretty much since you watched horror movies, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been a horror fan since like middle school. But then I really started getting into it probably around like 2012. That's when I first started going to college for film school. And I found that was like the genre that I found myself spending the most time in. I found a lot of my work, even if I wasn't making something in the horror genre, would have like some kind of dark elements to it. And then I really shifted the focus of my channel probably, yeah, like around 2013, 2014, and then started analyzing movies in 2017. That's when I started Things You Missed.
If I remember correctly, your favorite movie is The Shining, right?
Yes.
That one's got like a pretty deep bag to dive into.
Right. So this, I guess, maybe something that may have indirectly inspired me to like go this far in depth with the John Kramer video is with The Shining. Like, there's a whole community of people who are going in and analyzing like every little thing down to like the amount of candles on the wall as Jack walks by here, or like the placement of different mirrors around the overlook. So there have been like quite a few like websites and documentaries, the most famous of which being Room 237 by Rodney Asher, that have been basically like movie analysis of Kubrick's The Shining.
It's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorites.
I get a lot of requests to cover The Shining on my channel, and it's always like a tough thing for me to figure out because like all of these other people have already covered it, and like there's countless videos on YouTube, there's multiple feature-length documentaries, and I might have a little bit here and there that hasn't been said, but overall I'm worried that it would be like a lot of repeat and I wouldn't even know like where to credit those things, because they're just like I've spent so much time looking at that stuff and it's just kind of in my memory now. I don't necessarily know where it came from. But I think probably what I'll start doing is start with like the horror history episodes and do the characters in the book, and then maybe from there get into the movie stuff. There's also the 1997 movie, which is often overlooked. The Stanley Kubrick 1981 is definitely my favorite and my favorite movie of all time. But I don't think the 97 TV movie is necessarily terrible. I think there are a lot of redeeming qualities, so that might be something that I talk about in the future.
That's one with Steven Weber in it, right?
Yeah. That was like Stephen King was not initially a fan of the original Stanley Kubrick version because he changed so much stuff and changed the meanings of certain things, which is also, like, as a fan of that movie, kind of what makes it so interesting. Like, he deliberately switches stuff just to kind of make a statement and say, like, this is not the Stephen King story that you know and love. Like the most egregious of which is the color of the bug that they drive, the Volkswagen Beetle, is switched in the Kubrick movie. And there's a part where Halloran is driving in the snow and you see like a truck overturned on the old bug from the book. So it's kind of like he's stomping on Stephen King's vision. So Stephen King wanted to do his own, he wanted to do a movie more in line with what he had, the idea that he had for The Shining. And I believe that one was shot, or at least like the exteriors were shot in the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, which was like the inspiration for the Overlook.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some notable things to look at with that one, even if it's not as amazing as the 1980 version.
So wrapping up here, Zach, what do you have coming up outside the documentary? What can fans look forward to?
I guess I can say what I'm doing after that. So I'll be taking a little break from SAW. I think maybe in the future I will, like there are obviously a few characters that are fan favorites that I haven't covered yet. So I'll probably do kind of like what I do with Coraline and It now, where I'll like maybe every month or something, I'll drop another SAW character. The next series I'm going to be covering is going to be The Conjuring. We've got The Conjuring 3 coming up. And so far I have covered, it's so weird how this has happened, but I've covered all of the spin-offs, but none of the mainline movies. And I think that just has to do with like when I started doing the movie analysis stuff on my channel, which was, as I mentioned, 2017. That was like when Annabelle Creation came out, and then you had The Nun coming out after that. So once I cover The Conjuring 1 and 2 on Things You Missed, then I'll be all caught up with that series. I'm adding a couple of horror history episodes in for that as well. So that'll be coming up right after the SAW episodes. So I'll be staying busy with my release schedule.
Yay.
All right, everybody. Wrapping up right now. I'm Chase Will.
I'm Ashton McDonald.
And I'm Zach. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks for
Everybody, see you next
coming.
week. Bye.